Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Walden Wong Art, and today we're going to be doing an art review and critique. For those of you who are aspiring artists and wants to get into working in the comic book industry, I have a mentorship program over on my Patreon. My Patreon is patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. Check that out. Over there, there's different tiers that you can sign up for. Tiers for mentorship, tiers for getting assignments that you can work on, and then I would critique your work, and then I would do a video such as this one for you to look at and for everyone to understand. And for those of you who are learning, when you submit artwork to me and I do an art review and I target your work, you learn much faster. And I also have on my Patreon different tiers to show support for these videos that I make for you. So take a gander at my Patreon page. A little bit about me for those of you who don't know who I am and who just stumbled on this channel. It's like, who is this guy? My name is Walden Wong, and I'm a comic book artist from Marvel and DC. You can check out some of my work over on my website. My website is waldenwongart.com. Over on my website, you can see a gallery, catalog of information that I worked on, a news section, videos, even an art store where you can buy original art that I've done for Marvel Comics and DC Comics, as well as a Amazon store where you can click on the link and order the same art supplies and products that I use. So in some of the videos, you'll see me use certain tools and you're wondering what that is. You can just click that link and then look at all the different supplies that I have and just order from there. And anything you order, I get a little bit of commission. So thank you in advance for that. So today's video, I'm going to be reviewing one of my Patreon. His name is Tom, and he sent me an artwork to review. It looks like it's a Lady Death piece. So without further ado, let's take a look at his work. Okay, so here's Tom's work. It looks like a Lady Death right over here, and this is what it carries. So Tom's asking me to review his work on inking. We're gonna take a look at the pencils first. So this is the pencils. Let me move this over to the side and take a look at the pencils. So here's the top of the page. I don't know who the penciler is. The penciler didn't really sign his name, so I don't really know who that is. But regardless of who the penciler is, I'm just gonna go over and teach you how I do certain inking techniques and what I would do differently as if I was inking this. So here's the pencils. Nice solid contrasting colors, not that much hatch lines, not that much rendering, just a lot of solid lines over here. And then now we're going to take a look at the inks, Tom's inks on one of my Patreon, and right away I see there's a few areas that can be improved, so we're going to talk about that today. So one of these I noticed right away is, I'm going to zoom in, so right over here, these are called lines that are supposed to be tapered. Taper lines is when you're gradually getting from a white area to a light gray to a medium value to a dark gray and then to a black area. These lines are just coming out like just lines and they're random. I'm gonna mark these areas in red, and I'm also gonna ink it in red. I'm doing it digitally on Photoshop, but if you're planning on doing artwork traditionally on a Bristol board with a crow quill or a brush or a micron, the rules applies the same way. So say for example this, you see these lines over here, they're just random lines. So if I was inking this myself, I would go in there and I would ink these lines, I would space them evenly, and then I would have them close up nicely in the same place. So I'm gonna work on the area right here. So I press down, go thin, go thick, and then close up that line. So this area around here will be black. This area will have a gradual fade. Not only that, this line over here, this area, I want those lines to be tapered off to a little triangle. This is a nice taper line. So what I would do is, for example, I would go in here, close up that line, close up that line, close up that line. This is tapering. So for doing areas that runs into the black area, such as this one right here, I would taper those lines. Go thin, press in, go thin, press in, go thin, and then press in. You can also go the opposite direction. You can go thick and then come back out and go lighter. Go thick, come back out and go lighter. If you're inking, the best way to be an efficient inker is to be able to do both directions, to go thin and then thick into the black, or from black and then ease up on a brush or quill and then go thin. So I'm going to take a look at some of the other areas. So a lot of the areas that I see, it would benefit if you would go in there and kind of like taper in the lines. So just go in here and just taper those. Close up those lines, start thin, close up those lines, start thin. Sometimes you can always go back in there and add another line just to clean it up. And not only that, you see how I start these lines? They start in somewhat of a pattern, and then end, that little negative space ends in somewhat of a pattern. So if I look here, you see how this one starts, this one's up here, this one's like way up there. This one's down here, and all of a sudden it goes down, down, up. They're kind of random. I'm gonna pick another area. Like for example, here you see this. I know you're trying to taper these lines, but here you see this is up here, down here, up, up, and then down, and then up, and up, and then down. They're all over the place. It's better if you be consistent and then start those lines in the same area. Okay, you can always do the wave and then kind of like go up like this. As long as you have the pattern of starting the line, that's what makes the difference. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at some of these other areas. So right here, same here. These lines, when inking, they're not just lines there like for the sake of it. Pencilers sometimes they'll just indicate what lines are gonna be. Let me see this. There's like 7 lines there. And then here we add more. The good thing is that you added more lines, but I would go in there and I would clean them off. So I'm going to show you right over here. So right here, I would go in here, tape those lines, make it really clean, press into it, make it really dark, contour with the shape of the object that you're inking. Like this, just contour and just ink those lines in. Same with the other direction, just go thick, come back in, thick, ease up on the brush, come back in, like that. Okay, just take your time and make those nice and just close them off a little bit. Okay, we're going to take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so most of the areas that would need that work is any areas that has a line and is being tapered in there. So right here, same thing right here. So when I'm doing taper lines, I like to rotate my artwork. I want to like rotate it because my hand draws lines better on a certain direction. You want to close those lines, close up those lines like that. So we don't have these little rectangle shapes there. You don't want those rectangle shapes. You want to close it up. Some artists, what they'll do is they'll do taper. They'll just do blunt lines like this into a black area, and then to create a gray look, instead of tapering them, instead of closing them down into a little triangle, what they'll do is they'll just do a double line like that, and then that gives it a kind of like a gradual fade. Okay, now when you cross hatching is another form of art where you have to make sure everything is spaced evenly and nicely apart. So I'm going to do some cross hatching here, like for example this area. So right here I would just draw these lines, ink these lines with a quill, with a brush, micron, or whatever, space them evenly, and then I'll rotate it. After rotating it, and then I'll do the cross hatching. When I do these cross-hatch tapering lines, my goal is to have these little squares, you guys see all these little squares in here, to form a pattern. That pattern will create a gray tone. That is what you're looking for when you're doing a cross-tapering, cross-hatching, okay? You don't want your lines to kind of stand out and take away from the artwork. You want it to look unnoticeable. That's the best way I can explain it. Okay, now another thing I noticed that when you're inking here, I noticed that the line weight. Line weight is the line that's around on the outside of the character. The line weight doesn't have much line weight. When I'm inking, I like to have thick lines going to a thin line, going to a thick line, and so forth. When you're inking like that, it gives a flat 2D drawing somewhat of a 3D image. So I'm going to go over here and ink this arm. This arm, let's take a look at how the pencil looks. The pencil looks like there's some fur over there. So I'm going to ink this arm right over here. So if I'm inking this, I'll start going thick. So you go thick, and then I'll start inking some of the fur over here, and then I'll control the line weight. You see how I did that? Okay, I'm going to do this. So I'll start thin, and then I'll press down and go thick, like that. Okay, I'm going to rotate this arm, and right here. Based on the light, usually for the most part when you're inking, light is usually coming from the sky going downwards. Shadowy areas, like the bottom of the object, usually those lines are thicker, the top lines is thinner. So that said, when I look at this arm here, I want this arm to be thicker, and I'll go thinner here, and then I'll ease up and then I'll go thicker like this, and I'll go thin. Right on around this area, I'll go thick, and then I'll ease up on the line, and then I'll continue to ink that line. So let's take a look at how your pencils are, and then I'm going to ink right alongside so you can see the difference. So I'm going to go thick. See, let me select this. I'll go thick, and then I'll go thin, and I'll go thick like this. Go back over here, and then I'll ink that line. You see that line? It does more life into this line than just like a line that's like a dead flat line. So you want to make sure those lines are okay. I'm going to take a look at the pencils on this one. Okay, let's take a look at another area. Okay, let's take a look at another area that can benefit from the line weight. Like this holding line right here Notice that this line, it looks like it's inked with just a micron maybe, because the lines are just like one flat dead line. If I'm inking the shoulder, what I'll do is I'll go thick, thin, and then from here I go thick. You see that line, how it's thicker, and then it goes thin, and then it goes back thicker? That is what you want to do when you're inking. You want to control your lines. You see how I'm doing this? Like I'm go thick, thin, and then thick. Okay, and you're probably asking like, how do I know which area is going to be thicker or which area is thinner? You just, as long as you think about the shadow area, the bottom of the object is thicker, then you're in good shape. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at this arm over here. I'm gonna rotate it because my arm just works better drawing certain lines that way. My arm draws better arcing lines this way as opposed to drawing a line this way. Okay, so with this arm over here, I'll go thick and I'll go thin. You go thick here, thin, thick here, and then thin here. Okay, see that? Okay, looks like this one, the artist, they did some feathering. Looks like it's some kind of a beast character. So if it's feathering, this is how I approach inking this area. So say this arm over here. Yeah, let me look for some feathering. Yeah, so the feathering, I'm going to go in here. This feathering, instead of inking the lines kind of like just a line and then hatching it like that, just give that fur line a little bit more of a fur pattern. Okay, so I will go in here, ink that line. Once I get to this area, I would just break up some of the lines, some longer, some shorter, like this. Okay, just to give it more of a fur pattern. Okay, we're gonna take a look at the arm over here. See, that arm is just like a really thick, looks like a number 8 micron or maybe a number 5 over here. It's just a flat dead line. What you can do is you can bounce the line around. I'm gonna adjust this and ink that line and show you. Okay, so from here, I would go thick. Okay, and let me select this, go thick, go thin, thick here, bounce that line weight around. The more you bounce that line weight, the nicer it's gonna look. See that? There we go. So there. And also, you see the waist over here? Always think about line weights. This on the holding line. Again, you see this? This is just one dead line. There's no real thick to thin. So if I was going to ink this part of here, I would go thick here and then thin like this. And once I get up to here, I'll go thick and then thin. Okay. Same with here. Go thin and then thick. Okay. So when you're looking at that, it just gives more life to the artwork. And then here's another example of these taper lines. They're just lines. You should go in there and kind of close them off. So I'm gonna go here and then get my correct size brush, taper those lines like this, like that, and then close them up. That looks much better. Okay. Okay, we're gonna take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so the face, I'm going to take a look at the pencils on the face. Now, the face on the pencils, like the penciler spent a lot of time working on this, but when I look at the inks, it's a little bit off. You have the right idea of inking everything in the right place. I'm going to ink this piece right here, and then I'm going to show you the difference between how to approach inking a face. Okay, I'm just going to use black this time, and then I'll separate it. Right here, I'm gonna go ink this face. So inking the nose, I'll usually start thick, thin, and around here I'll go thick and then thin here. Every line that I ink, I'm concentrating on line weights or hatch lines. Like the lip over here, I'll go thick, and then I'll go thin here because it's the top. And then here I go thick. I'll break this line here, make this thicker, and then here thick, thin, go thicker, and then thinner. And then this lip, I'll just ink this line right over here and then go back right up there. Okay, and then the eyes, look how much detail that there is in the eye. I'm gonna use red so we can see this more clearly as I'm doing this for the video. Okay, I'm gonna go really thin, inking that line, follow some of these lines, a lot of hatch lines, and I will rotate the page, and then I would press down a little harder to get that line thicker. I would get that edge, that corner, I'll fill all that in. Okay, once I get to the eyelashes, I'll taper those lines, draw those lines like this. Okay, those eyelashes are drawn there and it just needs it. Okay, I'm draw this line, draw this eye here, finish this off. Okay, taper these lines. Anything in between, I'll just fill that in so there's no white page like pencil piece, and I'll just fill that in. Now eyebrows is one of my favorite things to ink. Instead of just tracing the line, let's see how it's looking. Instead of just making like a dark line like that, what I'll do is I'll go in there and I'll break up the lines. Okay, let me zoom in closer so we can all see. So I'll start with very thin lines. As I get close to the center of the eyebrow, I'll go thicker, and then I'll draw those lines with ink, either with a quill, a micron, or a brush. And then as I go further out, I'll start breaking up those lines. See that? I'm going to zoom back out so you can see how I've done the eyebrow. Okay, so right over here, remove that. See the eyebrow? See the eyes right over there? Okay, and then we'll see, compare that to how the original was. I'm also going to ink the other eye so we can see the rest of this image. Again, I'll rotate the Bristol board, I'll zoom in, and then with my brush, I'll rotate, just make sure it works with my right hand, and then I'll start tapering some of the lines. Once I get towards here, I'll start darkening up the lines. Make those lines a little bit beefier, connect those more together, and then I'll ink in each hair of the eyebrow, like this, okay? And I'll come back and I'll build up upon it. I'll rotate it, I'll ink the eye. So we have this part of the eye. Okay, we have that double eyelid, we want to ink this part. Okay, and then once we get to the bottom of the eye, I want to go here, ink this line, I'm going to go thinner. Top of the eyelid is always going to be thicker. Now we have this side, we're going to ink here. Now I'm going to start doing some of the eyelashes. Draw those lines, taper it back in. Draw that line, taper it back in. Controlling how thick and thin your line is really important, okay? You're not just tracing lines, you're inking on top and you're embellishing the pencils. So we're gonna taper those lines, taper this line, like this. Just like that, okay? Drawing some of those lines here, okay, adding some of this, and then now I'm gonna rotate back, zoom back out, we're gonna look at the eye, and then, you know what? I'm also going to ink the nose since I already done it, okay? So right here, here's the nose, go thick, thin, right here, go thick, thin, here's the other side of the nose, hatch some of those lines out, here's the lip, go thick, and then thin here, and then we'll go thick here, thin here, just bounce that line weight around. The more you bounce that line weight, the nicer your art's going to look. Thick, thin here, thick over here, thin, and then just go back here, bottom lip, thicker, and then thin, and right here, thicker. Okay, the chin, thick, and then go back around over there. Now the face, I'll rotate the Bristol board. The bottom of the face is going to be have a heavier line weight, so I'm going to go thick, press down harder with my quill, brush, or nib, and then I'll just ease up on that. I'll do that again. So we're going to go here, thicker, thinner, and then you notice how fast I ink that line. I'm just going to go like that. Now I ink that line fast because I can get a smoother line. Watch what happens when I ink this line slowly. You see it's kind of wobbly a little bit, but if I ink quickly, that line will be smooth, okay? So let's take a look at that line. Take a look at that face right over there. I'm going to rotate it back. There we go. See that face? Okay, we're going to take a look at how it looks like this, and then here's the pencils. We remove that. Here's the pencils, and then here's the original pencils. Here's the original inks, how it looks. And then I'm going to show you how it looks with the inking, like that. Remove this, okay? So this one, line weights just give your artwork a little bit more life, okay? We're going to continue with the rest of the piece. Okay, so some of the hair, we see some of these big black areas. Let me see how the pencils look. With the pencils, there are some fine tapered lines. So if I'm inking face hairs like that, I'm just gonna go in here, I'll rotate it again, and then I'm gonna zoom in, and then right here, I'm just gonna go in, press down, taper those lines, Give the hair like some kind of sheen with a little bit of a gray area. And to create a gray area, you would draw lines like this, space them apart evenly, and then make sure it goes from a very fine sharp tip like this, and then go into a black area. There we go. And this is all about controlling your brush, controlling your tools in Photoshop, or controlling your tools in Procreate or Clip Studio, whichever digital tools or brush or whatever tools you're using. It's brush sensitivity, okay? So for example, this hair area, I'll just go in here, I'll start thin, I'll press into it, start thin and go thick, So then right here I have a black area, and then here I'll ease back out into a thin area like this. See that? So space them evenly. So I'm going to go back out and rotate it back into place. We're going to take a look at how it looks like without the pencils. See, just having those lines makes it a little bit looking nicer. See that? Okay, we'll take a look at some of the other areas. So here again, so I would recommend using a brush, any kind of brush. One of my favorite brushes that I like to use is the Water Aquash Pentel brush. You can click on to some of the links below this video description to go to my art store and buy the same brush. Also, a quill is pretty good. And in Micron, you can do the same thing with Micron, but you have to go back in there and then build up upon it. Like this face over here, I would just do some things a little bit differently. So let's take the pencil. So right here, I'll ink this face, thicker, thin, make this thicker, thicker here, and then go thin, right over here. Concentrate on each form, each object. Okay, when you're inking, you're not just tracing, you're actually embellishing the artwork. Thick, thin, thick, like that. Okay, here's the mouth, thicker here because there's a shadow around that area. Go back up here, thicker here. Sometimes the pencilers will indicate that for you. We have thicker line, thin, thicker, and then we're gonna have this line come here. Here's the teeth. Usually when I'm drawing, when I'm inking, I don't really ink the whole teeth out there. Here's another teeth, and here's another one, and I'll indicate a little bit up there. And then here we have some taper, we have some hatch lines over here. We're gonna draw this line, and then we're gonna hatch some of that line out. Okay, with the eyes, you see how theirs is, okay, we're gonna take a look at inks. You see how you have just this line there? Add some weight to the line, just some shadows here. So when we add that shadow, crack up the line. One of the things I enjoy doing when I'm inking is that I'll crack, like for example, some of these faux line, I just break up those lines just to give it a little bit more edge, because this is like some kind of demon. So I'll hatch this line here, come back in, break this in here, come back here, hatch some of these lines out here, and then come back here and then just continue inking some of those lines, and then go in there and just add a little bit of your style to the artwork and just fill it in. Okay, we'll take a look at the pencils, the inks, and then we'll take a look at the pencils right over here. Okay, and then that's my inks. Okay, I'll zoom back out. Okay, for the most part, you do have good hand control, but it's just a matter of going in there and learning what to do with the inking. Now, some of the inking here, I noticed that you have the pencils calls for these little metal pieces. So what I'll do is I like to use like a white ink over here, and I would break up this piece right over here. I'm going to go over here and show you. I'm going to break up this piece. So it looks like sections, like almost like a Colossus of the X-Men, or Dr. Octopus tentacles. You know, just gives it a nice feel of metal over there. See that? I'm gonna zoom back out so you can compare this like horn compared to that horn. Notice that with the shoe here. You see these black areas? You have a line that runs across there, but a lot of that gets lost. So what I'll do is I'll go in here, and then I'll break up that line. This way you'll see that strap a little bit better. Okay, so right here, I will go in here, break up this line. I will go in here. Let me go in here, and I'm gonna rotate this and then draw this a little bit better to give me that smooth line. So practice the ghost line, go in here, and then ink that line. Okay, rotate it back. Same thing with the legs. I would also rotate the legs. I mean, not rotate the legs. I will also use a halo on the legs. So right here, when I'm making an area such as this, I'm just going to go in here and take this leg. I'm going to rotate it. Okay, I'm going to ink in. Let's see, like the bottom portion, it will be thicker, and then the top portion will be lighter. I'm going to ink the holding lines first. Holding line, which is the outline of the character. Thin. Let me grab red. Thick, and then thin, thick, thin. Okay, and then thick here, and then thin. Okay, I'm gonna go over here, thick, thin. Same with the other side, thin, and then thick. And then we're gonna go here, thin, thick, thin, thick, and then thin, thick. Here, I would just draw those lines. Let me rotate this this way. I would draw this line very lightly. Your interior lines, I would go as light as I can. Like that. Okay, and then my next step, I will go and fill in the black area. Fill in the black area, just use a big brush and just go in there and just fill it in. Okay, so it's consistent. Fill it in like that. Okay. Sometimes if you want to be creative, like what I usually do is I'll play with it, like one line here, and then I'll draw a double line just to give it a little bit of a flare on the gloss of the sheen, like this. When I work on Iron Man, a lot of times I'll do a double line like this. So here I'll do that again. So one line, another line, fill it in, and then go in here and just ink this in. After inking that in and filling in the black areas, what I like to do is I'll separate each section of the metal. So right here, let me rotate this. I'll use like the white gel pen. I'll go in here and I'll break up these lines. So right here, break up this line, break up this line, right over here. Keep that thickness the same. You don't want it to have any kind of line weight. You want to keep that thickness the same, okay? Gel pen here and a gel pen here. And then when you look at the artwork, it just looks more 3D. So we're gonna take a look at the pencils. Okay, we're gonna take a look at the inks. See that? It just has a nicer section. I'm gonna go in here and use my white to just touch that up a little bit more right over there, okay? A little bit cleaner. Usually when I'm doing publishing work, I like doing work traditionally, just so I have the original piece of artwork. But if you're doing this traditionally by hand, paper and pencil, or doing it by ink, the rule still applies, regardless of what way you're working with. See, there we go. Okay, so if this was black color, I'm just gonna select this. This may say this was black. I'm gonna select this. I'm gonna go in here and make this black color. So we'll see how this looks like in black. Okay, let me increase the size of this brush, and then go here. So if it was black, this would be how it would look like. Okay, so here's the pencils. Okay, so we'll look at it before the original inks. So hopefully you'll learn something from here, and then break up those lines and do line weights like that. Okay. And let me take a look at some of the other areas. So for right now, I would suggest working on taper lines, working on smooth lines, clean lines, also line weights. Work on line weights just to give it some motion, some line weights to it. Like I'm gonna work on this side of the finger to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm gonna decrease the size of my brush. Okay, I'm gonna work on this claw. I'm gonna rotate this. Go over here, and then if I was going to ink in this claw, thin, thick, thin, thick, go thin, go over here, thicker, here, and then that side of the claw. Okay, I'm going to do it in red on top of your original ink so you can see the difference. Okay, zoom back in. Okay, I like using the Hunts 102. That's the Crow Quill. Again, links below my video description so you can go to my art store. You can get the same tools I use. Thicker, thin, thicker, thin, thicker, thin, and then you go thin. Okay, ink that line quickly, go thick, thin, and there. I'll do this with the same with the other finger. Thicker, thin, thick, thin. Okay, that just looks a little bit more life to the artwork. Okay, we'll take a look at, yeah, so I would say for this piece, I would practice more on tapering lines, working on lightweights, thick lines to thin lines, work on cross-hatching, spacing the lines evenly, and then just look at areas. I would recommend try using a brush or a Crow Quill. Don't use that much microns. If you use micron, you have to sometimes build up on it. And to make lines more smoother, just ink the lines a little bit quicker with your hand. You'll be surprised how smooth lines will look when you're inking a line quickly. Like for example, if I was inking one of these black lines over here, I'm going to use red. Like you see how it's kind of like bumpy over here or it's bumpy here, and these lines are just bumpy. Try going in there and inking that line quickly. Okay, the quicker you draw that line, the smoother that line will be. So there you have it. That's Tom's work on this Lady Death piece. So if you have any questions about some of these inking techniques, and especially you, Tom, if you have any questions, comment down below and let me know, or just contact me over my Patreon since you're over on my mentorship here. Feel free to ask any questions. I always respond, as well as YouTube comments. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and if you enjoy these videos, hit that notification bell so anytime I upload a video, you'll be one of the first to see it. And hit that like button, so you know, it's just because it's cool. Smash it, tap it or touch it or whatever. As long as you hit the like button, it helps me out. Check out my website. It's waldenwongart.com. Over on my website, you can check out all the social medias that I have all over the place, like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all that stuff. On my website, there's also an Amazon page that you can order art supplies, the same art supplies I use. You can also order original art that I've done for Marvel Comics, DC Comics, order prints that I've done. So check that out. Look at videos there, a gallery, a store, lots of fun stuff to look at. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. You know what to do. And until next time, I hope you keep drawing and keep on being you. Take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.